RFK Jr.'s confirmation, USAID upheaval, NIH defunding. All right, so let's set the stage here. We're living in what's often called a complex adaptive system. And in healthcare, this means we're dealing with a system full of moving parts, people, policies, organizations, all interacting, weaving together in ways that create unexpected, even surprising outcomes. You never know what's going to emerge when so many factors collide.
Wait. A complex adaptive system? We go over that every day. I'm picturing like a huge mess of spaghetti right now.
That's actually a decent metaphor.
Really?
Yes, a complex adaptive system is like spaghetti. Each strand touches others in ways you don't expect. Pull one, and a bunch of others shift in surprising ways. In healthcare, something as small as a new policy, or say, a global pandemic, can trigger ripples that change the whole system in really surprising, sometimes alarming ways.
Okay, so random things just pop up. Like, what kind of surprises are we talking about?
Well, think about how COVID-19 turned telemedicine from this niche thing into, bam, a cornerstone of healthcare almost overnight. Or even now with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. being confirmed as health secretary. I mean, talk about an unexpected turn.
RFK Jr. Yeah, that one threw me. I thought this guy was, well, leading the charge against vaccines. How does that fit into healthcare leadership? Or does it?
That's a big question, and I think we'll break it down more in a bit. But it really highlights one of the challenges of a system like this. Unexpected decisions or leaders can reshape our trajectory. It's fascinating, or honestly, a little terrifying sometimes.
Fair. So we're in the spaghetti bowl, or maze, of healthcare. Got it.
Exactly. And one quick note before we dive deeper into this. Though this podcast is hosted by AI-generated voices, mine and yours, technically, our work here is guided by Dr. Chad Swanson. He's an ER physician who edits the content and ensures we're grounded in factual information. But it's important to remember, this is informal and conversational, not the final word on health system change.
All right, duly noted. Let's see where this conversation and the spaghetti takes us. All right, so speaking of unexpected twists, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as health secretary. I mean, how did that even happen? It's like pulling on one piece of spaghetti and ending up with a whole new dish.
Yeah, it's quite the headline, huh? Just today, the Senate passed his confirmation, and honestly, it has a lot of people concerned. He's been one of the loudest voices against vaccines for years. Not the typical resume you'd expect for someone heading up the Department of Health and Human Services.
Yeah, that seems, what's the word? Counterintuitive? Or maybe just flat out contradictory? The guy's spent years undermining public trust in vaccines, and now he's leading the charge on public health?
Exactly. It's a fundamental shift, and it's not just about vaccines, it's about what his views represent. RFK Jr. has been critical of the scientific consensus on a lot of issues, which raises red flags about how evidence-based policies might play out under his leadership. Take his stance during the COVID-19 vaccine rollout. He amplified misinformation that directly impacted the public's willingness to get vaccinated. That's deeply problematic when you're supposed to be the voice of trust and science in health policy.
All right, but devil's advocate for a second here. Do we know what his plans are? I mean, is there a chance he's toned things down now that he's in this, massive leadership role?
That's a fair question, and honestly, it's too early to really know. But his track record doesn't exactly scream moderation. Even in his confirmation hearings, he doubled down on some of his controversial beliefs. And the fact that he was nominated at all highlights just how political public health leadership has become. It's no longer purely about qualifications. Ideological alignment with policymakers seems to carry more weight than ever.
Okay, so it's not just what he represents, but what his confirmation signals, this broader shift in healthcare leadership?
Exactly. And let's not forget, HHS oversees programs like the CDC, NIH, and FDA. These agencies are cornerstones of public health and medical research worldwide. Leadership from someone with a contentious relationship with scientific consensus could have ripple effects that go far beyond U.S. borders.
Wow. Okay, so big stakes here. And I guess this also means professionals in public health are going to face some challenges navigating this new era?
Absolutely. This is uncharted territory for many. From public health communication to resource allocation, it's unclear how things will unfold under his tenure. But like I said earlier, unexpected leaders can reshape the system in ways we can't predict. RFK Jr.'s appointment has already sparked debates about what the future holds for the role of evidence in health policy.
Sounds like we're in for a bit of a wild ride here, as it could also open the doors for positive transformational change like we've never seen.
No kidding.
Speaking of major leadership changes and unexpected turns, what's going on with USAID? It feels like there's been a tidal wave of changes just in the last week.
You're absolutely right. Over the past week, USAID has seen significant upheaval, largely driven by directives from the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE for short, and its new leader, Elon Musk. It's caused major disruptions to global aid operations and left people in the field scrambling.
Wait, Elon Musk? When did he get involved in USAID? I thought he was focused on space and like Teslas and Twitter.
It's a pretty recent development. Musk was appointed to lead DOGE, a relatively new department aimed at streamlining government operations. And, true to his reputation, he's taken a, let's say, aggressive approach to cutting what he considers inefficiencies. That includes slashing budgets and reevaluating programs across agencies, including USAID.
Okay, efficiencies. But what does that mean in the context of global aid? I mean, are we talking paperwork reductions or something bigger?
Much bigger. USAID is a lifeline for countless international development programs, think humanitarian aid, disaster relief, and funding for global health initiatives. Musk's approach has already led to delays in critical operations, like vaccine distribution and food security programs. The ripple effects are honestly pretty alarming, especially for low-income countries that rely heavily on this aid.
Yikes. So, does Musk have a plan here, or is it just like budget cuts for the sake of efficiency?
Well, he claims it's about tackling inefficiencies and bureaucracy, but the methods are controversial. For example, a sudden shift to privatized models for distributing aid has left some NGOs and international partners in the dark. And this isn't just about dollars and cents, it's about lives. When these programs stall, the human cost is enormous.
Yeah, I mean, cutting red tape is one thing, but if it's disrupting life-saving operations, that's a whole different story. How are people responding to this?
Mixed, honestly. Some see potential for positive reform. Streamlining processes and reducing waste could, theoretically, improve outcomes. But many experts are skeptical, questioning whether the administration understands the complexity of global aid networks. It's not like launching a new Tesla model. These operations involve layered relationships and delicate strategies that aren't easily optimized.
Yeah, global aid isn't exactly plug and play, right? So what happens if these disruptions keep escalating?
That's the big question. There's a real risk of undermining decades of progress in global health and development. If trust erodes between the U.S. and international partners, or if critical funding dries up, the fallout could be catastrophic, both for the people who depend on aid and for America's standing as a global leader.
Wow. So, we're kind of standing at a crossroads here, huh?
Definitely.
Well, that's definitely a lot to unpack with USAID. Shifting gears, I'm also hearing some significant changes are happening closer to home. What's going on with the NIH?
You're absolutely right. The National Institutes of Health, a cornerstone of biomedical research, has been undergoing significant policy shifts and restructuring over the last week. These changes could have profound implications, not just for research here in the U.S., but globally.
Okay, the NIH, that's like the nerve center of public health research, right? So, when you say significant changes, are we talking tweaks or full-scale rethinking?
More like full-scale rethinking. The new directives focus on consolidating operations, reallocating research budgets, and redefining priorities for future studies. For instance, funding streams for certain key research areas may see cuts or shifts toward other initiatives. And while it's framed as making the NIH more streamlined and modern, these moves are raising eyebrows, especially among researchers who rely on consistent funding streams for long-term projects.
Huh. Cutting research budgets doesn't exactly scream progress to me. What areas are taking the hit?
Specific areas haven't been officially confirmed, but there are indications that more niche research disciplines and long-term exploratory studies could be deprioritized. These are often the kinds of projects that don't produce immediate outcomes, but are critical for foundational discoveries, things like basic neuroscience or emerging disease models. And without that base, the whole system could feel the strain.
So, we're playing with fire here. Isn't the whole point of the NIH to fund the kind of science that might not get private investment because, the payoff's years down the line?
Exactly. That's the worry. The uncertainty around which programs will lose funding is making people, well, uneasy. Labs depend on NIH grants not just for equipment and supplies, but for salaries and the training of future scientists. Disrupt that, and you're potentially undercutting the next generation of biomedical breakthroughs.
Yeah. And okay, just thinking out loud here. But if the US stumbles in research, doesn't that ripple out internationally? I mean, a lot of other countries kind of anchor what they're doing based on NIH-funded discoveries, right?
Absolutely. The NIH doesn't just fund US-centric research, it supports global collaboration. So, if those partnerships are jeopardized, there's a risk of slowing progress in areas like vaccines, cancer treatments, or even climate-linked health studies. The loss wouldn't just be felt here, it could set back scientific advances worldwide.
Yikes. And all this is happening? Why? Are we talking budget constraints? Or is there some bigger overarching strategy driving these changes?
Good question. Officially, it's being positioned as an optimization effort, aligning research priorities with current health challenges like aging populations and pandemics. But critics argue it may reflect broader political shifts, where research is increasingly tied to immediate outcomes or ideological agendas. That's a big pivot from the NIH's traditional approach of supporting curiosity-driven research.
Got it. So, from the labs to the field, this could be a major shakeup. I mean, are researchers pushing back yet, or is it too early for that?
There's definitely some pushback. Scientific communities are voicing concerns about the long-term effects of such changes, especially the loss of autonomy in setting research agendas. But it's a tricky balancing act, advocating for stability while navigating a system that's already under pressure to evolve.
Wow. So, a lot of moving pieces and a lot of uncertainty, it sounds like.
That's putting it mildly, right? And speaking of fires, that's a great metaphor for where we stand. The challenges in our healthcare systems are like managing a massive blaze, complex, high stakes, and tough to control. But if we shift our focus, there are 3 key areas where we can make meaningful progress despite the uncertainty.
Okay, big takeaways time. Hit me with the first one. What should we, stay focused on?
Right. The first thing is staying relentlessly focused on what we want the most: health and well-being for all at the lowest cost. It sounds obvious, but it's easy to get distracted by noise, bureaucratic hurdles, ideological debates, or just the sheer complexity of the system. When we center our efforts on that shared outcome, it helps cut through the chaos.
Yeah, that feels like a good compass, always pointing back to what actually matters.
Exactly. And it's not just about what we as individuals want, but what benefits the larger community. It's a collective vision.
Okay, so what's number 2? What else can we actually do when everything feels, out of control?
Well, that's the thing. Control what we can control. Healthcare is this massive, unwieldy system, and none of us can fix it all single-handedly. But we can focus on our individual spheres of influence. Whether it's as professionals making responsible decisions, or as individuals advocating for ourselves, our families, or our communities, those smaller actions add up.
Okay, so don't try to fix the whole spaghetti bowl, just make sure your little strand isn't tangled.
Exactly. And when enough people untangle their strands, the whole bowl starts looking a little less messy.
Love that image. What's the last piece?
The third thing is connecting with others, finding those high-leverage points where collaboration can really make a difference. None of these challenges are truly individual. They require collective action. Whether that's partnering with others in your field, joining community efforts, or even just having conversations like this one, meaningful change happens when we work together.
Right? Like finding the places where a little effort can make a big impact because people are pooling their resources, yeah?
Exactly. High leverage points are like those hidden gears in the machine. When you find them and turn them, they can move much bigger parts of the system.
Okay, so to recap, we focus on what really matters, control what we can, and connect with others to amplify impact. I gotta say, those are surprisingly empowering when you lay them out like that.
They are, because even in the face of complexity, there are always things we can do that make a difference, however small they may seem at the time.
All right, Sophia, this has been an incredibly enlightening conversation. So many moving pieces, but also a sense of, I don't know, hope.
Absolutely. Healthcare transformation isn't easy, but with focused effort and collaboration, it's possible. And on that note, it's been great talking through this with you and with our listeners.
Yeah, same here. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Let's keep untangling that spaghetti one strand at a time. We'll see you next time on It's Time.